Welcome, everyone, and happy opening day in baseball. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time here in the booming metropolis just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a place I like to call Ambler, PA. And you know what that means? Thursday, noon Eastern time, this special opening day edition. It is time for Talent Experience Live, the show that covers everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, talent management, recruiting, human resources as a whole, and so much more. This program is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion find the right work. That is why we host this podcast every single Thursday, why we have another great podcast with Cliff Yerkowitz called Unusual Attitudes, which comes out monthly, why we just got back from a wonderful I Am Phenom in Philadelphia, and why we do so much more. I am your host, Devin Foster, and we have a very, very special episode for you today. We're going to jump back into the levels conversation that we started just before I Am Phenom. So today we're going to tackle level 4. But before that, I mentioned Phenom helps a billion find the right work. And you may be wondering, how do you do that? This is just a podcast. Well, we certainly don't do it through only this. The real way that we help a billion find the right work is through our applied intelligence talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current role and beyond, recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, and managers get to build better teams through data automation and analytics. If any of this interests you at all, run Don't Walk to phenom.com, where I'm sure you'll see our upcoming HR Innovation Showcase information. It's going to be April 22nd. You won't want to miss that. We are diving deeper into all of the product announcements we made at I Am Phenom. So if you weren't able to attend, maybe you were able to attend, but weren't quick enough taking notes, maybe you hopped up and went to the bathroom at one moment, you won't want to miss our HR Innovation Showcase coming up April 22nd. Now, all of this talk around AI in HR is fantastic, but it is true that you need to take steps in order to reach your full potential. Just like anything else, like making it to the major leagues, right? You don't get drafted out of high school and start playing ball. You eventually work your way up through the minor league system, the double A's, the triple A's, anywhere that you can. Maybe you're playing for the Savannah Bananas, whatever it is. We're talking about the levels in AI and automation today, and I have a very special guest. It is Joanna Keel joining me to talk about level 4. So without any further hesitation, let's bring Joanna onto the program. Joanna, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Exhausted. I think anyone who was in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago for I Am Phenom must feel that way. But
Yeah.
we keep going. There's more innovation to be had. There is more technology to discover. There is more productivity to find. So that is why we are here. How's everything been? I know we saw each other in Philadelphia. What have you been up to?
Yeah, same old, same old.
Yeah.
Coming off of that adrenaline rush, you are not wrong. I am phenom is all the feels. Your feet abandon you at one point. They're like, I swear to God, if you walk me down that aisle one more time,
Yeah.
I'm taking
I
you
left my feet at the top of the Rocky Steps. I completely understand.
down.
They were gone after day one, but yes.
Yeah, but I see the attendees and, it's my favorite part of I Am Phenom is just seeing the teams. The teams there so authentic and in the moment and laughing and taking pictures and documenting, hey, and you see like light bulbs literally like going off. So it's just such a wonderful feeling to come back. It's strange because you come back with all this energy, but you're at such a detriment too with all the walking
Yeah.
and the late nights and
Mhm.
the party at Reading, station. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
No,
all the things.
I know it makes me happy to come back from my own phenom and just see all of LinkedIn, everyone, posting their pictures. That means it was a successful event because you've seen the concerts where people are excited to go see whatever artist it is. They take pictures before, but none during, none after. It's like it never happened. I Am Phenom. The way that I gauge success is afterwards. People are going back through their memories. They're posting pictures with Francis, with Phenoms, with the innovation session, with Simon Sinek, whatever it may be, because they want to relive it a little bit. So it's always exciting to see.
Yeah, agree.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know that I have had conversations with Bronca. I've had conversations with John Deal, with Spencer, the entire product marketing team leading up to this about levels. We went from level 0, and now we are on level 4.
Mm.
Now, those have been over the span of a few months. So if you could, not just for me, mostly for the audience at home, but maybe a little bit for me, could you refresh us on the concept of these levels, and maybe you don't have to use a baseball, analogy like I did. We'll explain it to folks in layman's terms because not everyone loves baseball, right?
That is true. Um, and sure, I'll take a non-baseball approach for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the easiest way to think about levels really is they just track how work is shifting from human led to systems over time, right?
Yep.
So at the earliest levels, right, that anything before 4, everything is manual or manual to some extent. And then you move into maybe there's automation that's helping you with a lot of tasks, intelligence that are helping your teams guide decisions, right? But by the time you reach level 4, level 4, you are in a very different place. It looks very different from 3, it looks very different from 2, and very different from 1. And why that is because automation is really running most of that workflow, right? So intelligence is actively making decisions within it. So it's not about doing things faster, right? Time. It's really about fundamentally changing how the work gets done, who is doing it, or what is doing it. So that's what's going on in level 4. It's this real fundamental shift.
Yeah. No, I like to think of it as I have toddlers at home, as you know, Joanna.
Yep.
It is like watching a child grow up, right? At
Yes.
first, you
Yes.
have to, feed, change, do all of the things, and slowly over time, that child turns into its very own human and it starts making its own decisions, right? And and
Yes.
and then it is it's crazy. They're real grown-ups, even at the age of 3 or 4. But I've noticed because I have a 4-year-old at home that there is a stark difference between the age of 3 and the age of 4. I
Yes.
know that that is very similar in this levels conversation. So, can you tell me what the biggest differences are between level 3 and level 4? Because I know it's not fighting bedtime, which is what I have to deal with at home right now.
Well, actually, it kinda is in a weird way, because the agents are working past bedtime.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, no, so you are so right, and the toddler analogy is actually, like, kinda spot on, right? So level 3, what we're really seeing is that AI is helpful. Automation is helpful. You are feeling that as a team. You're feeling, "Hey, my workday isn't as hard as it used to be." But really, it's just supporting humans in the work. So think of it like the level 3s. This is where the recruiters are still getting those recommendations. They are using automations that assist with parts of the process, but the human is still driving the workflow. So level 4, that's where that flips. So that bedtime analogy, right?
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
agent can now work past 5 p.m. and happily, by the way. And while candidates are still interested in screening, right, or scheduling an interview. So really what's happening here in level 4 is that system is doing the workflow. In the and the human is stepping in where it matters most. They're reviewing, they're guiding, and most importantly, making final decisions. So
Yeah.
a real simple way to think about it, level 3 is really helping you do the work better. Level 4 starts doing the work for you.
Okay. All right. Now, how does that reshape kind of the operating models of what a recruiter's day to day look like? I remember back way before automation when I was a recruiter, my mornings were spent sourcing, right, and then
Mhm.
scheduling, and then afternoons were probably interviews. Everyone is different. How does this level of high automation truly change the way work and operating is looking for talent acquisition professionals across the industry?
Yeah, what I like to think of is like work is already happening before you log in.
Mhm.
So think about that. So your role is to guide it, not start it. So that is like one of the biggest things. And so automation is handling the execution, right? So instead of maybe that recruiter, they're kicking off, let's say, a hiring campaign, they're setting up the screening and then they're putting in the blocks for scheduling interviews. And that entire flow can start automatically, right? Based on demand. The recruiter's going to go in and go, go ahead and start. But now in level 4, what can happen is that candidates can move from apply to screening to scheduling, and the agent or the AI is handling coordinating every single step. Even onboarding can trigger automatically once the offer is accepted. right? So the operating model is really shifting from people managing all those pieces, right? Stepping in to systems managing the flow, and where the humans now are really thinking about the outcome, the people, who gets hired.
No, that makes total sense. And I'm going to go back to the child analogy. It is, you are past the point of holding a hand and walking a child, right? It is steering a child to make sure that they don't run into the street. It is
Yeah.
making sure that you have those kind of, I want to say, guardrails in place to make sure that uh, chaos doesn't ensue. Which I love the point where that you brought up there, is that the hiring decision at the end of the day is made by the humans, because that is the most important, that human interaction, right? You got to look both ways before you cross the street,
That's
as I
right.
tell my daughters all the time. Now, obviously all of this comes with a level of intelligence, right? We are beyond the point of reducing the mundane tasks. We are starting to shift from just recommendations of a fit score or anything along those lines into some, I want to say decision making. I believe that's the wrong term, but into
Yeah.
some of this truly intelligent decisions that it can make for you. Now, if I said anything incorrectly, please correct me there. But how is this beyond just recommendations? I guess is my question in
Y
layman's terms.
Yeah, actually, what you said earlier was, like, really good. So, like, it'll if a toddler at a level 3, you're still reminding it, "Hey, look both ways," and the toddler doesn't.
Yeah.
At level 4, the toddler looks both ways, and then you're looking back to go, they did it, right? I trained them to do what they did.
Yeah.
So you're just there as the guardrail. So that's a really good way of thinking about it. So you're still just as present, right? But now your role is changing from making sure they did something to now you can focus on something else. It's teaching the newest moment, right? So, but if you think about that in HR, so instead of having maybe a dashboard that says, "Oh my God, you're so short in candidates in this region," there's a red numbers, we need something. An agent can identify that gap. It can launch a campaign and it can start screening candidates. Or let's say instead of suggesting maybe better assessments, the system can build an assessment for that role and automatically evaluate candidates against it. When I say evaluate, this is no decision.
Yeah.
This is simply applying your logic as you would do as a human and displaying that to you. So then you can decide as a human to take an action, right? So it's no longer this insight into action by a human. It's insight into action by the system running it and level 4.
And you mentioned agents there, and we haven't talked about them yet. The rise of agents, and one of the things that I like that you mentioned was it is evaluating. We talked about the opportunity to stay up past bedtime, and agents will start to screen candidates to that
Yeah,
perspective. Is this where things like voice agent comes into play, where it can really be effective and
that's right.
start allowing candidates to show their full work history, their full personality, at 9, 10 o'clock at night when recruiters are fast asleep or reading princess stories or whatever it may be. Where does agent based workflows really fit into this level 4?
Yeah, so level 4 is really agentic.
Mm.
So that is the main difference from 3. So it'd be rare for you to be in level 3 without an agent because level 4 is where you're really augmenting the task. So, like I said, the recruiter is not removed whatsoever. The task of the recruiter is changed. So, this is where that work really feels different. And you are so right. Voice screening agent is a huge piece of that because it can work. It's the team member that can work the hours you don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
It can work the weekend shifts. It can work the past 5. And the most beautiful part about that for a candidate, that fits better into your schedule. So now imagine it from that point of view. Candidates are very willing to talk to an agent because they're like so excited that they heard from someone that they're continuing on something, some sort of journey, and they can complete it on their own time in a way they feel very comfortable in doing.
No, I find myself wanting to talk to agents more, and I don't even talk to them right now. I had an issue with my house this past week, and I was trying to call the office from the property management company. I couldn't get through to anybody. They're like, "Call us on Monday." I'm like, "A piece of my house fell off. What am I supposed to do here?" Right? Like, you want to talk to somebody, you want to, and it's because it's outside of those hours. Um, Voice agent, I mentioned there, it allows you to kind of showcase your full self. So I want to really dive a little bit deeper onto that.
Sure.
How do skills and signals and context really help these agents drive for smarter recommendations, not smarter decisions, but smarter evaluations? Does it start to learn and pick up on things based on the decisions that the humans and that the recruiters are making, where it can identify some of those soft skills or some of those experiences that may not correlate, but have a lot of crossover?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what makes this really nice in level four is it's not just about looking at the resume anymore, right? You can evolve your hiring process, your entire TA process, because you can look at those skills in different ways. You can look at how does a candidate engage? Hey, what is their availability? Is location for this role critical? You can even measure how do they perform in just an average screening conversation, right? So, take this for example. Let's think of retail. If you could automatically prioritize candidates who live closest to the store, right? And here's the shifts that you need. It's not just static matching anymore. It's dynamic and it's really helping you make those real-time decisions based on context that you couldn't get just off of a resume. Right? You had to get it in all these different ways and then remember it somehow, right? In our brains we don't have that capacity to remember all those things all the time. But
Yeah.
AI is very very good at big data. And so it knows right away of, hey, Joanna's your girl because she already said she can work Tuesdays and that's the shift you need.
Mhm. Yeah, and it loves big data. It also has no bias for when someone applies, when someone uploads their information, or when they schedule that voice agent interview. And I liken it to, there are times when I've noticed on LinkedIn there'll be a job open, and it's like over 100 people
Yeah.
have already applied to this position. That immediately is going to turn off a candidate.
Yeah.
They could be the best candidate for you, right? And allowing yourself to give them still a fair chance, allow not be hiring decisions not be based on who's at the top of your inbox or who's at the top of your job board or anything like that is
That's right.
going to be a huge advantage for organizations. But it also needs governance, right? It needs explainability in some of this. So, how has the acceptance and the adoption of some of these agents really turned I mean, governments has always been a non-negotiable, but now I think it is at the forefront of everyone's mind. How has this entire workflow impacted that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is trust is always the hardest part, right? So when AI is doing this much, you need to be able to explain every decision, period. So if a candidate is screened out, you need to know why. Which questions triggered it? What was the scoring? Did you review the moment? Did this align with your compliance requirements? All of this is documented and audible, by the way, and it's not a piece of paper where you wrote this down on if it was a manual way.
Yep.
You can even look into, let's say, the system's prioritizing candidate over another. Recruiters need visibility into that logic too, because at this level, it's not just about automation. You're scaling decision making so the human can make the best decision possible, and that really requires that trust.
It's not just valuable from a legality perspective. I think it's also valuable from a candidate experience perspective, right? How
Mm.
many times have candidates complained about getting ghosted after they've interviewed, right? Used to be all over the news. Um, I know from my experience chatting with recruiters, having some cocktails with them in conversations, maybe off the record. Sometimes they ignore or ghost candidates because they don't know how to explain the decision making
Yeah.
process. Right? That doesn't make it okay. It's a human element. What this does is it'll allow recruiters and talent acquisition teams that if somebody has a question as to why they were DQ'd from a rec, why they weren't moved forward to the next round, there is an explainability aspect in that you can say, well, we had 3 or 4 more candidates who had more experience in this particular area,
Yeah.
right? That is going to be invaluable to the candidate experience. It allows the candidates to actually get some constructive feedback as well, right?
Absolutely. And you're not wrong. The recruiter math doesn't change, right? Like the job that used to get 10 applications on a good day now gets 100. But
Hmm.
the person, the recruiter doing that cannot scale 100 applications.
No.
They still have to do the recruiter math. They're what? They're looking for the top 10 to maybe that they'd call to then maybe interview 5, right? To then maybe push 2 on and ultimately
Mhm.
choose the 1.
Yeah.
This now opens up this whole idea of, like, being way more fair to a candidate because everyone can get a shot.
Yeah.
With that volume, there's just it's not possible,
No.
for a recruiter to do that on their own.
I mean, you can look at 100 resumes. You're not looking at them carefully, right?
No.
You are, and there's a whole bunch of other sticky situations that recruiters get in based on format of resumes and if they like the way it looks or
Yeah.
whatnot. If they can find the information, um, all not good things, but recruiters are humans and sometimes they make bad decisions as well. But this allows that larger candidate pool that you mentioned, that 100 candidates, to each get a fair shot no matter when they come into the process, and all get evaluated equally without some of those biases coming in. Now, the main question of all of this is why are we doing it, right? Joanna, organizations are going to look at themselves and say, we're at level 3, level 4 sounds great, but how do they measure success differently, right? Where you've mentioned the entire game has changed with the implementation of agents, with some of these recommendations and all sorts of that. But how do you truly measure success? Is it just a saving time metric, or what really goes into all of that?
That's what's constantly evolving now, right? So, is it the stopwatch method? Start, go, faster, better. The faster is not necessarily
Mhm.
better, right? If you're not hiring the highest quality person, who cares about speed,
Yeah.
right? If you are hiring a very very quality person, what is the speed of that? So it's really about more than that. It's thinking about the overall system's performance, including the humans in that. So maybe it is how fast a recruiter can complete a task, or maybe it is things like how many candidates can be screened in an hour, or how much can run without a human touch, right? And think of that capacity you've unlocked for your team. Does that allow for more candidates to get screened? Does that allow for more times with the hiring manager? There's a lot of different metrics you can throw in there, right? And that looks completely different than your just traditional operating model of time to fill, all those different things.
Yeah. And I think it can completely change the overall experience of a candidate at the
Yeah.
end of the day, right?
Yep.
If these things allow for less human touch or even no human touch in certain instances, think of the experience that you can provide an A plus 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 candidate that walks in the door, that you now have time to give a tour of the office, right? You now have time to walk around and sit in a conference room, offer them water, meet them, walk them to the door or whatever it may be. Those are the little extra things that I think of when I think of like five-star hotels, right? Not, the motel at the end of the block. I almost named a few, but I don't want to go down that road. That's a sticky situation. But it is that extra experience. At the end of the day, if you're competing with, a company down the block, it's the same hotel room, right? There is a bed, there is a television, there is a bathroom, but it is that experience to and from the door, and then what's inside that you can showcase that will truly make, I think, a difference if all things are created equal. And allowing agents and allowing this AI and automation into recruiters' workflows is going to give them time to put that chocolate on somebody's pillow when they come in for an interview, right? But all of this stems from trust, right? You need to believe in AI, and it is also going to require a culture shift of, this isn't the way we used to do things. This is the new way forward. How can leaders and decision makers really roll this out to their teams in order to have success? Because if they don't believe in it, they won't it won't be successful.
No, and even all the analysts are saying change management is just it's going to the top of every single report, right? Um, but I want to set the stage. Let's remind us we're in level 4.
Yeah.
So when you get to level 4, you've already built that trust and you're hungry for more.
Mhm.
So that's what's lovely about the levels is that the trust increases as you go through each of the level. So this is not about turning on that switch for your team. That's not going to work. Once you're in level 4, you've made it through 1, You've made it through 2. You've made it through 3. And 3, that 3 when they're like, "I don't have to schedule. Oh my god, I'm reviewing screenings when I come in the morning rather than picking up the phone. I love this. What else?" So, and that's where level 4 is like, "Let me show you what else." And so there's already trust by the time you get to level 4, right? Because you've you've done the journey. You don't go from 0 to 4. It won't work.
No.
You did the journey. Now you're moving on. So instead of doing what you just said, those 20 screenings, to narrow it down to 10, that math, right? You're trusting the agent. You already know that your screening that you did in level 3 is working, but now you're just augmenting your role a little bit more. So again, you're starting your day reviewing the screenings that the agent did rather than you picking up the phone and being like, I have to do 20 screenings in 20 minutes. And I have, a business review that I got to do. That is gone by the time it's at level 4. So the trust built all the way up. And so it's a lot easier to deploy.
Yeah, at this point, you're at Oliver Twist levels of automation, where it's, "Can I have some more, sir, please?" That's what I think. A little bit of a British accent there for you, but I'm gonna sneak in another analogy, Joanna, because that's how my mind works. It's riding a bike, right?
Yes.
Little children start on kind of the walking sort of trainer bikes. Then you put some training wheels on it. All of a sudden, one training wheel is off. Then you're riding without any training wheels. You're simply just riding a bike. But there is certainly a difference, and this is level 4, where you are riding a bike, kind of weeble wobble, but you don't fall down, versus someone who is, and I've seen these kids at the park, they scare me, but just cruising and then slamming on the brakes, kicking up dirt. I think that is the difference between a leader and maybe an early adopter in level 4. What separates them when it comes to this particular level? Obviously, it's not training wheels and it's not slamming on the brakes and kicking up dirt everywhere. There has to be something that showcases where an organization is ready for to
Yeah.
potentially start dipping their toes into that level 5 because they're a leader.
Yeah, the real difference is how deeply that AI is embedded, right? So early adopters, they're still experimenting. Maybe they put some scheduling on a few roles, but those roles that require multi-day or back to back, they're just choosing not to do that. Not that the technology is not there, they're just choosing not to yet, right? So they use it in these pockets. But what level 4 leaders are doing very well is they're running a workflow end to end, and they're constantly asking, what else? What's next? SSM Health is a really good example of this. They were using scheduling and screening, lots of other things, and their team was freed up to think strategically. And they said, you know what else takes a lot of our time? Intake meetings. So they start thinking about, what if an intake agent can help us? What would that look like to our team? And all of a sudden, all the team got curious. And now they're using an intake agent, right? So they're now operating AI across different stages all the time. They're just constantly thinking about it because they're already in it.
Yeah. I like the one thing you mentioned there was all of the team, right? And I think there could probably be some challenges with organizations where they're trying to skip steps because they have one, individual who's eating up all of this AI technology, but it truly does take the entire team to buy into it in order for it to be successful. And not everyone's going to be at the same level,
Nope.
right? Some folks are going to pick up on it and learn it quickly, but you need that entire team buy-in in order to start experimenting and start asking about intake agents and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. And by the time you get to level 4, because you inched your way in,
Yeah.
it's not that hard. It's not that big of a stretch. And in fact, a lot of the recruiters will say, "Oh my god, I'm relieved because we were just tasked with, hiring 200 roles in 6 weeks. I didn't know how I was going to do that, and now they have a solution." So they're turning way more strategic.
Awesome. Well, Joanna, I that does it for my questions. You've answered all of them. I feel like I'm at level 4, ready to go to level 5. Kidding, of course, I am not. But anything else that you wanted to add? Anything that I may have missed asking? Anything you wanted to tell the audience at home, maybe to drive this episode out of the park? There's a
No,
baseball.
but I will say we will be showing a lot of level 4 in our innovation showcase coming up. in
Perfect.
April. So I
Awesome.
highly recommend if any of this sounded interesting, please register. We would love for you to join. Come curious, come ready to learn, um, and we can do some great things together. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joanna. I really appreciate. Can't wait to have you on again. And we'll see you real soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. That does it for another episode of Talent Experience Live. Of course, we dove into level 4 of AI and automation today. You can always download the AI and automation benchmarks report. That's available at phenom.com. But if you don't feel like reading, attend the HR Innovation Showcase that Joanna just mentioned, April 22nd, 2026, live from Phenom Studios. You won't want to miss it. You can register now at phenom.com. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. Enjoy some basketball. I know the Sweet 16 is this weekend. Enjoy some baseball as well. Just enjoy all of the sports. I can't wait to see you all next week for another exciting episode of Talent Experience Live. We'll see you soon. Thanks.